Ladies and gentlemen, there are people who will treat New Year's Eve 2026 like a normal day, and that one choice will confuse everyone around them, because the modern world is addicted to symbolism. We've been trained to believe that meaning must be loud, that transformation must happen at midnight, that a calendar flip is a spiritual restart button. Fireworks, countdowns, parties, photos, speeches, forced excitement, and the pressure to feel something big at the exact same moment as everyone else. So when someone says, "It's just another night," people instantly build a story. They're boring. They're lonely. They're depressed. They're bitter. But psychology says something far more accurate. Treating a big cultural event like a normal day can be a sign of emotional regulation, a sign of maturity, a sign of deep self-knowledge, or sometimes a sign of a hidden wound. The key is understanding the motive, not judging the behavior. Some people treat New Year's Eve like a normal day because they don't outsource meaning to dates. They don't hand their identity over to a calendar, and they don't wait for symbolism to do the work that only discipline can do. Their mindset is built around a hard truth. Real change is not a moment, it is a pattern. They've watched enough cycles in themselves and in others to recognize how seductive fresh start energy can be. A countdown creates emotional electricity. The world tells you, this is your reset. Your brain loves that because it feels clean, it feels hopeful, it feels like you can be a new person without facing the slow, uncomfortable process of becoming one. But people who live by systems have learned the difference between inspiration and infrastructure. A system-focused person understands that motivation is unreliable. Motivation rises when you're excited and disappears when you're tired, stressed, bored, or discouraged. So instead of building a life that requires constant motivation, they build a life that runs on routine. They don't ask, "Do I feel like it?" They ask, "What's the process?" They know that the version of you who will win is not the version who gets excited once a year. It is the version who repeats a small set of behaviors consistently, even when the day is ordinary, even when nobody is watching, even when the results are not visible yet. This is why New Year's Eve doesn't feel special to them. Not because they lack emotion, but because their relationship with time is mature. They don't believe that January 1st has magical power. They believe that Tuesday morning has power if you show up. They believe that a random Thursday has power if you keep your promise to yourself. They believe that the real New Year is any day you decide to change your behavior and stick to it. For them, symbolism is optional, but commitment is non-negotiable. There is also a psychological realism behind this. Many people treat New Year's like a psychological permission slip. They give themselves permission to start again, to forgive themselves, to dream bigger, to try harder. But a system-minded person doesn't wait for permission. They know that waiting for permission is a hidden form of delay. If you need a special date to begin, you are quietly training your brain to postpone responsibility. You are telling yourself, later is safer than now. And the brain loves later. Because later protects you from failure today. People who refuse to outsource meaning to dates have usually made peace with failure as part of growth. They would rather start now and stumble than wait for a perfect moment that never comes. This mindset is often shaped by experience. They've seen resolution culture. They've watched people make big promises under fireworks, then disappear by mid-January. They've watched the same motivational speeches repeat every year, while the same habits remain untouched. They understand that hype is not transformation. Hype is emotion. Transformation is repetition. Hype is a spike. Transformation is a slope. Hype is a feeling. Transformation is a structure. So instead of saying, "This year I will change everything," they say, "Today I will do the next right thing." Instead of dramatic goals, they build measurable habits. Instead of vague promises, they create rules. Instead of relying on willpower, they design their environment. They set alarms. They prepare meals. They plan workouts. They schedule deep work. They remove distractions. They break big goals into daily actions. They track progress. They create accountability. That is what systems are, a set of decisions made in advance, so you don't have to negotiate with your emotions in the moment. Another key psychological feature here is identity stability. People who outsource meaning to dates often experience identity swings. They feel powerful on New Year's, then feel ashamed when they slip, then feel hopeless, then wait for the next reset. It becomes a cycle of emotional extremes. The system-based person avoids this by building identity around consistency, not perfection. They don't need to be new person overnight. They focus on being a slightly better person repeatedly. Their self-respect comes from follow-through, not from fantasy. They measure themselves by how often they return to the process, not by how dramatic their starting line feels. This also connects to self-trust. When you keep small promises to yourself, your brain starts believing you. When you break promises repeatedly, your brain stops trusting you. New Year's resolutions fail so often because they are usually too big, too vague, and too dependent on emotion. The system person protects self-trust by setting goals that can be executed, not just imagined. They choose actions that match their reality, then expand slowly. That slow expansion builds credibility inside the mind, and credibility is confidence. Confidence is not loud talk, confidence is proof. So treating New Year's Eve like a normal day can be a sign of psychological maturity, a refusal to let culture dictate meaning, a decision to build life through systems, and a commitment to consistency over spectacle. The ordinary day becomes sacred because it is where habits are built, where identity is shaped, where the future is created, one repeatable action at a time. Some people treat New Year's Eve 2026 like a normal day because their nervous system prioritizes peace over performance. This is not about being anti-fun. It's about how their body reads stimulation. What looks like celebration to one person can feel like chaos to another. Loud noise, crowded rooms, traffic, bright lights, social pressure, forced excitement, unpredictable energy, alcohol-driven behavior, late-night disruption. All of that can activate stress responses in a person whose system is sensitive, tired, or already overloaded. So while the world is chasing fireworks, they are chasing regulation. A regulated person doesn't choose calm because they're weak. They choose calm because they know what dysregulation costs. When your nervous system is overwhelmed, your thinking becomes worse, your patience becomes thinner, your emotions become louder, your reactions become sharper, your sleep becomes fragile. Many people don't connect their mood problems to overstimulation, but the body keeps records. Too much noise, too many people, too many expectations, too little sleep, too much comparison, too much social masking. It all adds up. Some people have learned that the most powerful gift they can give themselves is protecting their internal environment. They'd rather wake up on January 1st with a clear head and a calm body than wake up with anxiety, exhaustion, and regret. This keynote is about nervous system wisdom. There are people who are naturally more sensitive to stimulation, not in a dramatic way, but in a neurological way. Their brain processes sensory input deeply. Crowds can feel draining. Loud music can feel invasive. Small talk can feel exhausting because it requires constant social performance. They may be the type who spends energy reading people, managing impressions, sensing moods, staying polite, staying alert, and after a few hours, their battery drops to zero. They don't want to spend a night pretending they're fine while their body is begging for quiet. They choose peace because peace is not a luxury for them. It's a requirement. There's also a psychological component of authenticity. Many New Year's gatherings come with emotional rules. Be happy. Be excited. Be social. Be grateful. Be fun. If you don't match the mood, you feel judged. Some people hate that pressure. They don't want to perform joy. They don't want to fake excitement. They don't want to smile for photos while their inner world feels heavy or tired. They'd rather live truthfully than act cheerful. That doesn't mean they're negative. It means they refuse emotional acting. They respect the idea that emotions should be felt, not manufactured for social approval. Another reason peace becomes the priority is boundaries. Some people have learned through experience that big social nights often invite unnecessary stress, family drama, toxic friends, awkward conversations, gossip, and emotional triggers. They know that one night of fun can turn into weeks of emotional cleanup, so they opt out, not as an insult, but as self-protection. They choose to reduce exposure to environments that increase the chance of conflict, comparison, or impulsive behavior. This is a mature form of self-care, identifying what destabilizes you and refusing to walk into it just because it's popular. Peace over performance also shows up in how they view attention. Many people attend big celebrations to be seen, to be included, to post photos, to prove they're having a good time. The system loves visibility, but a peace, prioritizing person is often less driven by external validation. They don't need pictures to confirm their joy. They don't need a crowd to feel alive. They don't need a party to feel valuable. Their nervous system feels safer when life is real, not displayed. They might enjoy a quiet meal with one close person more than a room full of acquaintances. They prefer depth over noise. This keynote can also be shaped by burnout. When a person has been running hard, working long hours, carrying family responsibilities, dealing with stress, their body is not craving fireworks, it's craving recovery. A normal day on New Year's Eve can be an act of compassion toward a tired mind. It can be someone saying, "I don't need to squeeze more stimulation into my life, I need to restore." Restoration is not laziness, it's strategy. A rested brain makes better decisions. A calm nervous system communicates better. A regulated body chooses healthier habits. So skipping the chaos is sometimes an intelligent investment in the next day, not a rejection of celebration. There is also a hidden social courage in this. It takes confidence to say no when everyone is saying yes. It takes self-trust to choose what is right for your body over what is expected by others. Many people attend events they don't want to attend because they fear judgment, fear missing out, fear being labeled boring. The peace-prioritizing person has usually faced that fear and decided that their mental health matters more than their image. They'd rather be misunderstood and calm than accepted and overwhelmed. At its best, this keynote is about self-regulation, boundaries, authenticity, and nervous system respect. Choosing a normal night can be choosing a stable mind. It can be choosing sleep. It can be choosing calm. It can be choosing a fresh January 1st with energy and clarity. It can be choosing peace as a lifestyle, not as a temporary break. Some people treat New Year's Eve 2026 like a normal day because they have a private mindset. They don't perform emotions or growth for an audience, and they don't confuse visibility with meaning. Their inner life is not designed for public consumption. They may reflect deeply, feel gratitude, feel sadness, feel hope, or feel nothing dramatic at all, but they experience it as something sacred and personal, not something that needs to be broadcast, photographed, captioned, or validated by other people's reactions. A private mindset often starts with one belief: what is real doesn't need proof. In a culture where so much is documented, people can start treating their experiences like they only count if they are posted. A meal isn't complete without a story. A relationship isn't real unless it's shown. A celebration isn't meaningful unless it's visible. A private person rejects that entire system. They don't want their emotional life to become content. They don't want their milestones to become performance. They don't want to measure their joy by the reaction it gets. They measure it by how it feels. This is why they might skip the public rituals of New Year's Eve. They don't feel a need to announce closure or announce goals. They don't want to write dramatic posts, "Goodbye 2026," or "New chapter." Not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't want strangers and casual acquaintances inside their inner world. They understand that once something is shared publicly, it becomes open to interpretation, judgment, comparison, and sometimes envy. A private person tends to protect what matters. They protect their hopes because hope is fragile. They protect their plans because early exposure invites interference, opinions, and pressure. They protect their relationships because intimacy feels safer when it's not watched. A private mindset can also be a form of emotional intelligence. Many people are not capable of holding your vulnerability responsibly. Some people turn your honesty into gossip. Some people use your pain as entertainment. Some people respond with shallow advice instead of real empathy. Some people pretend to support you but secretly compare themselves to you. A private person has learned this, either through experience or observation, and so they become selective with emotional access. They share deeply with a few trusted people, not widely with many. Their circle is small, but their bonds can be strong. This keynote also connects to identity. When you don't perform your life publicly, you rely more on internal validation. You don't need the crowd to tell you who you are. You don't build identity through likes or attention. You build it through consistency, values, and self-trust. That means you can have a meaningful New Year's Eve without any external signs. You can sit quietly and still feel proud of what you survived. You can feel grateful without announcing it. You can plan your future without posting it. You can reflect without putting it into a motivational quote. Your growth belongs to you. There is also a deeper psychological protection here. Pressure changes behavior. When you announce a goal publicly, you can feel exposed. You might feel watched. You might feel judged if you fail. You might feel forced to perform progress. For a private person, that pressure is unnecessary. They prefer to work quietly, then let results speak later. They don't want to be encouraged by strangers. They want to be guided by discipline. They understand that too much talking can become a substitute for doing. Sometimes people announce plans to feel the dopamine of progress without actually doing the work. A private person often avoids that trap. They keep plans close, they execute quietly, they reveal outcomes when they're real. This private mindset can also come from a need for emotional stability. New Year's Eve can trigger comparison and regret. People post highlights, glamorous parties, perfect couples, expensive fireworks. A private person may not want to participate in that public comparison game. They might not want to scroll through other people's highlight reels and measure their life against it. They may want to keep their mind clean. They might choose a quiet night specifically to avoid the emotional noise, the pressure to look happy, the pressure to prove success, the pressure to show a perfect life. They would rather have peace than a story that looks impressive. Of course, privacy can have a shadow side. Sometimes a private mindset is actually fear of being seen, fear of judgment, social anxiety, or shame. Sometimes someone avoids celebrations because they feel behind, because they feel they haven't achieved enough, because they don't want to face the mirror of time passing. But the healthy version of privacy is not hiding, it is choosing. It is saying, I am in control of my access. It is saying, I share what is safe to share, with people who are safe to receive it. It is saying, my life is not a public performance. So treating New Year's Eve like a normal day can be a sign of someone who lives inwardly, who values dignity, who protects their emotional world, who refuses to turn their feelings into content, and who believes that the most powerful transformations happen quietly. They may not celebrate loudly, but they may be doing something far more meaningful, closing chapters privately, making peace with the year, forgiving themselves, choosing clarity, and building the next version of their life in silence. Some people treat New Year's Eve 2026 like a normal day because they are deeply realistic about time. They don't romanticize the calendar. They don't treat midnight as magic. They understand a truth that can sound cold at first, but is actually freeing. A date change does not change you. Your actions do. This realism isn't negativity, it's clarity. It's the refusal to confuse symbolism with transformation. A realistic mind sees the mechanics behind New Year energy. They recognize that the excitement around the new year is a social wave. It's cultural momentum, collective emotion, and a shared story that says, this is your reset. That story can inspire people, but it can also deceive them. It can create the illusion that motivation will last because it feels powerful in the moment. Realists know that feeling powerful for one night doesn't automatically create discipline for the next morning. They've watched people make big declarations, then return to old patterns. They've watched themselves do it too. So they stop believing in emotional fireworks as a strategy. This keynote is built on a very practical psychological observation. Humans love clean beginnings because clean beginnings reduce responsibility. If you believe the new year is a reset, you can postpone change until then. You can tell yourself, after December, I'll start. And then December becomes an excuse to delay. A realist sees that delaying is the real enemy. They understand that if you need a special date to become better, you are training your brain to rely on external permission instead of internal leadership. They also understand that life doesn't move in perfect chapters. Problems don't pause because it's January. Habits don't disappear because the month changed. Relationships don't heal because you watched fireworks. Trauma doesn't leave because you wrote a resolution. So they choose to keep the night normal because the night is normal in reality. Realism also protects people from disappointment. Many people go into New Year's Eve carrying a secret fantasy. If I celebrate enough, I'll feel hopeful again. If I make strong resolutions, I'll become a new person. If I have the perfect night, the year will feel redeemed. When the night ends and they wake up still feeling the same, the crash can be painful. Realists avoid this crash by keeping expectations grounded. They don't demand the night to be special. They don't demand themselves to feel a certain emotion. They accept whatever is real. That acceptance can be healthier than forced happiness, because forced happiness often becomes shame when you can't maintain it. Another part of this keynote is that realists focus on what is measurable. Instead of believing in a fresh start, they believe in a plan. Instead of wishing for a better year, they build a structure for a better year. They think in behaviors, not vibes. Sleep schedule, nutrition, workouts, savings, learning, boundaries, communication, work focus. These are the things that shape a year. They understand that if you repeat the same behaviors, you will reproduce the same outcomes, no matter what the calendar says. so they don't need to celebrate loudly to feel like they've done something meaningful. They prefer to spend that energy setting up real systems, cleaning their environment, planning their next week, reviewing what worked, adjusting what didn't, because they respect reality more than ritual. This realism also shows up in their identity. They may not like the phrase, "new me," not because they hate growth, but because they understand growth is gradual. They don't want to pretend they can erase themselves and become someone else overnight. They want honest improvement. They prefer better habits over new identity. They prefer small changes repeated over big promises shouted. A realist doesn't rely on dramatic reinvention because dramatic reinvention often collapses under pressure. They rely on incremental progress that can survive stress. Realistic people often have a strong relationship with cause and effect. They know that what you do on normal days creates your results on special days. If you want confidence, you build it through practice. If you want peace, you build it through boundaries. If you want money, you build it through decisions. If you want health, you build it through habits. So a realist treats New Year's Eve like a normal day because they don't want to lie to themselves. They don't want to pretend they're resetting when they haven't changed the inputs yet. They don't want to celebrate a new start without building a new system. Of course, realism can sometimes be used as a mask. Some people call themselves realistic when they are actually afraid to hope. They avoid celebration because hope feels risky, because hope can lead to disappointment. But healthy realism is not hopelessness. Healthy realism is believing that you can change, but only through behavior, only through consistency, only through action. It says, "I don't need magic, I need execution." It says, "I don't need midnight to transform me, I need tomorrow morning to be different." It says, "I don't need a party to prove my future, I need a plan I can follow when nobody is watching." Treating New Year's Eve 2026 like a normal day can be a healthy sign of self-respect, but it can also be a protective shield, and the difference is the motive. The behavior looks the same from the outside. Someone stays home, avoids the party, skips the countdown, goes to bed early, doesn't post anything. But psychologically, the inner reason can be completely different. This keynote is about understanding that the same action can come from alignment or avoidance, and your life changes when you learn to tell the difference. When it comes from alignment, it's a deliberate choice. The person knows themselves. They know what helps them. They know what drains them. They are not trying to prove anything to anyone. They are not doing it out of fear. They simply prefer peace, privacy, rest, or quiet reflection. They might be emotionally regulated, system, focused, or introverted. They may genuinely enjoy a simple night, a meal, a book, prayer, a movie, journaling, a calm walk, a deep conversation with one trusted person. Their nervous system feels safe. Their mind feels clear. There is no inner tension about missing out. They can see fireworks on a screen and feel neutral. They can hear people celebrating outside and still feel content. This is alignment, the feeling of inner congruence. This fits who I am. When it comes from avoidance, the body is often telling a different story. The person may say, "It's just a normal day," but inside they feel heavy, tense, defensive, or numb. They might be avoiding situations that trigger pain, regret, loneliness, shame, or social anxiety. New Year's Eve is a powerful mirror. It forces a person to feel time passing. It reminds them of what they didn't do, what they lost, who they miss, where they feel behind. For some people, celebrations highlight the gap between their public image and their private reality. So rather than face that emotional mirror, they shut down the whole event. They turn the volume down. They treat it as normal, not because they're calm, but because they're protecting themselves from feeling. Grief is one of the most common avoidance drivers. If someone has lost a loved one, a relationship, a home, a dream, or a version of life they expected, New Year's Eve can sting. It can feel like the world is celebrating while they're still mourning. It can feel like the calendar is moving forward while their heart is stuck. In that state, skipping celebration can be healthy, because grief needs space, not pressure. But it can also become avoidance if the person never allows themselves to mourn, never speaks about the loss, never creates a safe ritual for remembrance, and instead numbs out year after year. Then, the normal day becomes emotional freezing, not healing. Shame is another driver. Some people avoid New Year's Eve because it forces a comparison. They see other people posting wins, parties, relationships, vacations, and they feel behind. They feel like a failure. They feel judged, even if nobody is judging them. Shame makes people hide. Shame makes people disappear. Shame whispers. If you don't show up, nobody will notice you're not winning. So they opt out. They say it's normal, but inside they feel small. This is not about celebration. It's about self-worth. The solution isn't to force a party. The solution is to rebuild self-respect through small actions, because shame shrinks when you start keeping promises to yourself again. Social anxiety can also hide under this behavior. For some people, big gatherings are not fun, they are threat. The mind imagines judgment, awkwardness, rejection, being watched, being evaluated. The person might avoid the night because they don't want to feel exposed. They might fear conversations about goals, relationships, and what are you doing with your life? They might fear being asked questions they can't answer confidently, so they stay home, but not in peace, in avoidance. In that case, treating it like a normal day is a coping strategy, but it might not be the healthiest long-term strategy if it keeps them trapped. Burnout is another important factor, and burnout sits in the middle because it can be both alignment and avoidance. If someone is genuinely exhausted, staying quiet is wise. Rest is recovery. But if someone is constantly burnt out because they never face the patterns that are draining them, overworking, poor boundaries, emotional caretaking, unresolved stress, then normal day becomes another form of running from the deeper problem by collapsing into sleep. This keynote matters because once you understand motive, you gain choice. You can ask yourself simple questions. Do I feel calm or do I feel numb? Do I feel relieved or do I feel ashamed? Do I feel grounded or do I feel defensive? Am I choosing quiet because it fits me or because I'm afraid of what I'll feel if I participate? If it's alignment, honor it proudly. If it's avoidance, don't shame yourself. Get curious. Create a healthier version of the night. A private ritual, a journal page, a walk, a prayer, a call with one safe person, something that lets you feel without drowning. Because healing isn't about being loud or being social. Healing is about being honest with yourself and choosing what actually supports your nervous system and your future.